I feel like interviewers treat you like cattle in India.
Now I can realize that probably I made a mistake, that I didn't negotiate it, because DirectI was giving me a very good offer than what I had at Microsoft. Like even after promotions, I had double increments. Even then, the base salary was quite less than what DirectI was offering me. All right, so Surag, I'm glad that we have covered a lot of different things about masters, and now I want to navigate into like how expensive masters is. Probably because a lot of Indian families might not be able to afford this, and scholarships also play an important role. So, can you please touch upon that now?
A great question. I think one reason why a lot of people are scared of the idea of doing a master's is the cost, and it's a great reason, especially in the US. You just help grade in a course, or you just help teach students in a section in a small tutorial. RAships are research assistantships in which you perform research with another professor,
I
and
see.
you can help him or her in the research, and you get paid in the process, right? So at Stanford, if you get a TAship or an RAship, they cover your entire tuition, and you get a salary on top of that. So uh, in that case, Stanford's really the best case scenario in which you don't have to spend. So in my case, I spend money in my first 3 months, 3 4 in the quarter we have here. But after that, I had TA ships or RA ships, and so after that, I did not spend a single penny. But for a lot of my friends who are at different universities and top universities, it's not always the same case. In some universities, you just get paid by the hour. You get paid a fixed amount to say $20 to $25 for 20 hours a week. You do not get tuition waivers. So that in some certain cases only covers a fraction of your costs, right? So it really, at the end of the day, it depends on which university you're going into, and the best shot you would have is to talk to people who are at those universities,
Hmm.
find out what the kinds of policies are. Unfortunately, there's no one centralized source where you can find this. You really have to do your own research. So if you get along, if you have a group of friends, I think having a group of friends when you're applying for a master's super
Hmm.
important, right? If you have people who are on the same path as you can all just distribute the effort, find out about different universities, what the policies are, how easy is it to get a TA ship, how much does it cover, and you'll find that in certain universities you might just get by spending very little amount of money, maybe 10 lakhs. And honestly, what happens is that, especially for CS, is that you end up, if it's a 2 year program, you're likely to get an internship in your summer, and that internship would probably cover could probably fetch you as much as $20,000, right? Which would cover a fair chunk of your fees. So there's a few different factors. I think the best way to go about it is to ask people who are already at those universities.
Right.
Uh, don't have to ask Indian students. You can just ask
Got it.
any international student at that university. Try to find out, gather as much information, and you'll be surprised that you can do a master's in the US and actually get paid for it. Right? It's possible. Um,
Like you are saying that you do have to pay a high fee, because of course the standard of like the cost of living is also different in US, so that's why
yeah.
we as Indians will feel that it's quite high. But having said that, you can save a lot of that from scholarships, or even if you miss that chance, you can probably go into like working with professors, and probably like grading courseworks and all those things, so you
Yeah,
get
absolutely.
something. And in some colleges you are also saying that if you do this, if you sign up for this, the tuition fee is also completely waived off, right?
Absolutely. That's exactly. Again, it depends on which university you're in. Sometimes it's not as easy. Sometimes what I saw with my friends at Stanford was that mostly all my friends got a TA-ship or an R-ship in their second year,
Okay.
if not in their first year. And so uh, definitely, I think most of my friends, even at other universities, ended up doing either a TA-ship or an RA-ship and got compensated for it in one way or another. So yeah, while again, it really depends on the university, and it is possible in many cases to just offset a lot of your costs.
Got it. And like I'm hoping that like this TA ship and RA ship sounds awesome, but I think it might come with a twist. Like as you were saying, it took you 3-4 months to finally start with it. So is there any criteria that professors are only looking for some selective students whom they should pick up for this task?
Yeah, generally they're looking for people who have done the course or a similar course in their undergrad, and I think if you have some experience, definitely helps. Otherwise, you can do the course in the first quarter, and certain courses are offered every quarter or every semester, and so once you've done it, you can try to TA for that course in a later semester. I just want to add that it's hard to get scholarships, especially for masters. Scholarships are very limited. I don't know of any friend who got a scholarship, especially for CS.
I see.
People do apply for endowments, which are interest-free loans, I think, from a lot of
Hmm.
uh, places in India, and I think uh, that's usually what people opt for. It's very hard to get scholarships, and they're quite limited.
So you're saying that probably most of the students are taking loans, something called as endowment plans or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, those are also quite selective. So you have to apply for some of
Ah,
these programs. I can add details on that later, maybe if
awesome.
that's.
All right. All right. So now having like we have covered a lot of things. Now I want to talk about, and I really want to know this, not just from my audience, but like I am also curious about asking this. How is the crowd at Stanford different from that of IITs?
Yeah, great question. And as someone who has been at these places, I try to ask that to myself a lot of times, and the answer changes. But I think there's a big picture that I want to share, which is that when you join IIT, you are really surrounded by some of the smartest people. You know the kinds of exams they've given because you all give the same exam. So okay, if someone got a better rank than me, they're probably really, very, really smart, right? And so there is this level of technical competence that most people at these universities have.
Right.
Um, uh, Generally, the application criteria for Stanford is a lot more softer in that you don't have to give an exam like the JEE, right? So a lot of it depends on a person might just be an expert in a certain subfield of computer science or whatever, um, and they might only have demonstrated, say, expertise limited to that field in terms of maybe software engineering skills or open source contributions, something like that. So I would say, if you take the ordinary IIT kid versus the average Stanford kid, it's possible that on an exam like the JEE, where you test hard technical skills, the IIT kid might do better.
Hmm.
But I think what really sets people apart at these universities is that a lot of people come into IITs but don't really want to be there, right? A lot of people come there because of external pressures, but not because of their personal will or desire to explore the fields. And it's true, right? Because when we gave the interviews, gave the exams, we didn't know what fields we wanted to apply, and we were quite clueless as to what we want to do, right? And we just chose what our rank allowed us to take, right? Whereas at places like Stanford, there are few restrictions on what people can take. A lot of They're okay with even hundreds of people taking computer science, but ultimately people do what they feel like doing,
Right.
and I think that makes a huge difference in the long run, because even if you don't have the kind of technical competence an average IT kid can have, if you have the desire to excel in that field, I think that more than compensates for the lack in, or for the difference in technical skills, more than enough.
Right, and I think it also makes you aware of the unbiased mindset. Like because as you have mentioned that when you are at IITs, probably if someone is having a better rank than you, you would think that he's better than me. But now people are coming from different countries. You don't know what is the difficulty of the entrance exams in their country. So at that point of time, you realize that you were living with a biased mindset, and you come in terms with new such philosophies. And other than that, I think the other point that you talked about, like people who come to Stanford, and I think now they are pursuing higher education, so probably they are even having more context, because when we were in colleges, like we were always studying about geography, SST, math. Then in 11th and 12th we narrowed it down to physics, chemistry and math. But once you are in college, in 4 years you have actually explored a lot of computer science, and you have grown a lot as a person, so you have better clarity on your life. So maybe that's also one of the reasons which helps you feel that like people over here really want to be here, because
Yes, sir. For masters, but even for undergrads, I've seen that a lot in the undergraduate population at Stanford, which is that students are really interested, and a lot of people, even people who are coming in, have done a lot of computer science in their 11th, 12th, right? So these days, a lot of high schoolers have solid research experience in machine learning, just 10th, 11th, 12th graders, and they're clearly interested in it. Maybe they're pressured into it by their parents, but they're definitely interested in that kind of stuff. So
I see.
definitely for masters, completely agree. But even for undergrad, I think to a certain extent, people
Hmm.
coming in have have more clarity, and they have definitely a more flexibility in that they can choose even at the end of their second year if they want to switch. And I've met people who do things like biology and architecture. They do a double major in biology and architecture, and that's all. You can only do that if you're really interested in these two fields, right? So uh, yeah, I would say that sets these universities.
I understand. And I think the reason for that might be lying in the grounds of the education policy in schools, as well as the overall trend of a nation. Like, for example, India, as you can see, the trend is about sending your kid to IIT. Like parents are focusing on that. So kind of, I would say it's like bhed chal in Hindi. Like
Yeah,
people are
absolutely.
doing that for years. Let's just do that. It's easy for them because parents at this point of time know shit about like what exactly software engineering is, what all these things mean. Probably that's not the case in other countries.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. In India, it's extremely competitive, right? And so universities just have so many applicants, and the easiest thing for them to do is just to have you take an exam and not care about what you're actually interested in. And so the whole system is designed for you to just do well on that one exam.
Exactly.
Whereas in the US, of course, the different system, so you have to focus on the bigger picture, right? You have to really think about what you want to work on and show other aspects apart from how well you can do on an exam.
Interesting. Now, having like talking about more of this US India stuff, I want to now also talk about how is hiring different in
Yeah.
like in universities like Stanford as compared to IITs, in which like we are sitting like probably giving some hacker rank test for a company, and then we get shortlisted, and then there is interviews. They ask how to invert a binary tree, and then we answer it, and probably it goes something like that. How is it different
Yeah.
in US?
Yes, I had some experience interviewing when I was in my fourth year, right? So when we had day one, day two of placements, back then, of course, I was busy with my master's application, so I couldn't focus a lot on the interviews. But the sense I got when I came for these interviews, exactly what you described them as, right? You give all of these exams. I feel like interviewers treat you like cattle in India. They're just, one person comes in, the next person goes out. If you don't do well on the exam, sorry, just it's fine. We're not going to talk to you. You just get the next person. And makes sense. These companies have thousands of applicants. They just want to shortlist. The process at Stanford is very strikingly different in that um, interviews actually seem to care about you. They have these discussions even before you apply. They have these hiring HR folks and even tech folks um, come to you, and they have these career fairs which go on. So usually career fairs are events in which a lot of companies set up their stalls on campus, and it happens, I would say, 4 times in 6 months. A lot of big companies, even small companies, startups come there
I
with
see.
some of their tech folks, some of their HR folks, and you can have conversations with them and really figure out if you're a good fit. So even before you apply, they're
Wow.
spending time with you to understand what you want. You can ask a software engineer at that company what their day-to-day work looks like and really understand if that's a good technical fit for you. And then you can share your resume with them. And often, if they like your resume, especially if you're from one of these universities, you're already sort of shortlisted for the interview, right? Um, I don't think, yeah, so maybe at big companies like Google, they make you write these exams, HackerRank like tests. Some of the smaller firms, you just get a direct phone call interview with some of the recruiters and the managers there. And I think it's overall a more nice experience. They actually treat you not as cattle, but as humans who are going through this stressful phase of looking for a job. And I think that I thought was very different from my experience at IIT.
And I mean, it's not just stressful for us, it's the other way around as well. If you are like, if you're talking about the way that you have described, it's enjoyable from both perspectives because both of you are looking forward to this conversation. But if you reverse that, like if you are talking about like treating interviewers, like treating candidates as cattle, probably it's that point of time both of the parties get frustrated about like
Right.
what they are doing.
Absolutely. If you think about it, unfortunately the system in now that I think of it, the system in India is such that there is just 1 or 2 days, right, of which we call day one and day two of hiring, where
Right.
most of the recruitment takes place. But if you think about it, there's no real reason it should be that way, right? Here, hiring is a continuous process, and
Right.
these companies come. Sometimes instead of these career fairs, just one company comes, like an Apple or Google will come with 50 or 20, 30 people from
Right.
different software engineering teams, and you can actually talk to people in specific teams.
That's
And
awesome.
it's a continuous process, right? It doesn't, all the stress does not have to be bottled to one day, because even generally, if you're applying for a job outside of university, you won't just wait for December 1st to apply, right? You could even do it in May or March if that works better for you, right? So it's a weird system that's designed, especially at these IITs, to put an extra element of pressure which doesn't have to be there.
That's right.
And as you
And
said, it's pressure for both the students who are interviewing and also for
yep.
the recruiters.
And at the same time, I'm sure that this thing does not exist over there, but I'll mention it because we are having this discussion that once you get final, like if you get an offer from Google, now you cannot sit in other interviews. That's also the thing that we have in India.
Yeah.
If you have
It's
cracked
super.
one interview, that's it. Like you are tagged with, and the reason behind that is because they don't want to spoil their relations with the college does not want Google to get pissed off, or I don't think Google will get pissed off, but I think other companies might get, like they might get pissed off that they hired three people and then everyone went to some other job offer because it was better. So
Yeah.
probably to avoid that communication, they try to do this wherein you get an
Right.
offer, that's it, you're done.
Right. So I think placement cells have these have this sort of understanding or even a contract with these companies in India. They're also the equivalent of placement cells in US universities, but I think the rules are not as stringent as the ones you
I
described.
see.
Certainly, it's not that you can keep interviewing for the longest time, but I think there's a time frame in that once you get an offer from a company, you have say 1 or 2 months perhaps, especially for internships. I think for jobs, it's even more relaxed than that, in which you can interview with other companies, you can get offers from other companies, and you can tell this company that you have an offer from another company and negotiate. And I know a
Right,
lot of people just end up getting multiple offers and try their best to negotiate with these companies to get the best possible offer possible, uh,
right,
best offer possible for their for themselves. And
exactly.
yeah, and I think this unfortunately in India that's not the system, and that just adds to everyone's stress.
I completely agree with that, and I have faced it myself as well. So, when I was in college, I had an offer from Microsoft, but direct I had already given me an offer 2 weeks back before day one of our like before day zero. If
Yeah,
I'm a like
yeah.
I'm zero based indexing, so like I had an offer from direct 2 weeks before, and direct I was also coming on day one to our campus, and on day zero I got placed into Microsoft. So it like direct I was really hoping to meet and talk to me, but I was like really nervous. Should I go? Would they question me like you have cracked Microsoft, so are you joining? So I was really tense, and I didn't
Right,
even meet
right.
them at that point of time. But yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like I can completely agree. Like for students who are like facing such things in colleges, they are really nervous and they don't know how to act in such cases. Like
Yeah.
so one thing which I've seen is having an off-campus offer, like the direct I one in my case. I should have actually negotiated with Microsoft. Instead of that, I just joined it, and now I can realize that probably I made a mistake that I didn't negotiate it because direct I was giving me a very good offer than what I had at Microsoft. Like even after promotions, I had double increments. Even then, the base salary was quite less than what direct I was offering me.
Absolutely. I think I had a very similar experience because of the placement cell, right? So we had to fill an order of companies by
Correct.
which,
Priority.
if yeah, we had to fill a priority order. And what happened to me was I got on the same day I interviewed with two companies and I got offers from both of them. But I ended up liking the offer from the company that was lower on my priority list. And so I had to spend a whole day in front of the placement cell coordinator and I had to beg her to just let me to switch. And all of this is so unnecessary because it doesn't happen in the real world, right? So if you were to interview just 1 year after college with these companies, you'd
Exactly.
have way more freedom. So it's
Exactly.
there are just these structures built in place that are not for the advantage of the students, but it's not really
Exactly.
built towards anyone's advantage if you think about it.
I think it's about keeping things cleaner. For like they don't want to
Totally.
open up more communication channels and get into that mess.
In that sense, yeah, hiring here is more decentralized. There's a lot of off-campus hiring happening. You are completely free to, and in most cases, people apply to companies outside of the campus hiring process.
Right.
Um,
But I think again, I think there might be many complications. Let's give them the benefit of doubt. That's another thing which I've learned as a software engineer. Probably we are not that acquainted with the internals and how messy can things be. Probably they had to come up with this to make things simple.
Quite possible, yeah.
So now I want to talk about, do you have any like troubling thoughts when you're doing masters full time? Because you might have seen that like your batchmates who have graduated from the 2017 batch, right? So you might have seen that they are like doing awesome software engineering jobs, they are getting promoted, and they are traveling the world because you might get
Yeah,
on-site opportunities. So you see all the good stuff happening for your batchmates. You should be happy
yeah.
for them. But at the same time, as an individual, does it get your does it get your mind to be thinking about are you doing the right thing, or probably is it probably you
Yeah.
should have not done it?
It's a great question, I think, and I'm sure a lot of people who are considering doing a master's will have the exact same questions. I want to start by saying everyone's circumstances are different, and what might be the case for me might not be the case for you. But I want to say that definitely, when you start a master's, or you're even thinking of applying for one, you'll always have a lot of folks, your batchmates who are already at good jobs, as you said. But really, what you're doing by a master's is you're investing in the long run. You're playing, you're playing a game in the long run. In that maybe 5 years down the line, you'll probably get great opportunities by virtue of doing your masters. And so, definitely in the short run, it might look as if you're missing out on certain things, but I think in the long run, it generally works out. It's not an issue.
Awesome. Got it. Thanks. And now, on the ending note, do you have any, like, probably you will have many tips, so I would change my question to what are the top 3 tips that come to your mind for people who want to pursue masters, preparing for masters?
Yeah, grades, having a higher CGPA will definitely not hurt your chances. GRE, prepare for it takes a couple of months to really get your game up. It's definitely possible. It's not too hard, but it takes time. And thirdly, you work with people, either professors or colleagues at companies. Make sure that they have a good understanding of your skills and capabilities, so that in the end they can write a letter for you that speaks about the kind of skills that you can showcase.
Awesome. And guys, just to make sure, like, who is telling you this guy has really, like, you already know the credentials, but can you just mention your GRE score as well?
I think I got a 334 on my GRE.
Sorry?
334 on my GRE.
334. Man, that's awesome. Congratulations. I mean, it's real honor to like have this conversation with you. I'm like really passionate about having this conversation.
Pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
Awesome. So Surag, I think we have covered everything that we needed for masters. Now, since you have again done you are currently doing PhD from Stanford again in computer science. So now I want to shift the communication a little bit towards this.